Sometimes God asks us to take the first step before we can see the whole path. He asks us to obey before we understand why. He asks us to trust Him when nothing makes sense to our human minds. This morning, we're going to talk to God about obedience, not the obedience that comes after we've figured everything out, but the kind that comes from pure trust, the kind that says, "Lord, I don't understand this, but I'm going to follow you anyway." Throughout the Bible, God asked His people to obey first and understand later. Abraham didn't understand why God would ask him to leave his home. Moses didn't understand how he could lead a nation. The disciples didn't understand why Jesus had to die. But they obeyed first, and understanding came in God's perfect timing. Today, if God is asking you to do something that doesn't make sense yet, you're in good company. Let's pray together about walking in obedience even when we can't see where the path leads. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let's talk to our Father. Good morning, Lord. I come to you today with a heart that wants to obey you, even when I don't understand everything. Father, I confess that sometimes I want to know all the answers before I take the first step. I want to understand the whole plan before I commit to following your voice. But Lord, I'm learning that obedience isn't about understanding everything first. It's about trusting you completely. Your word says in Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." Father, teach me to trust you with all my heart. Help me to stop leaning on my own understanding, as if I could figure everything out by myself. I acknowledge that you are wiser than I am, and your ways are higher than my ways. Lord, I'm grateful that you don't require me to understand everything before I can follow you. If you did, I would never move forward. My human mind is limited. There are things I simply cannot comprehend from my limited perspective. But you see everything. You know the beginning from the end. You understand what I cannot see. Help me to remember that obedience is how I show my trust in you. Father, I think about Abraham this morning. You called him to leave his home and go to a place he had never seen. You didn't give him a map. You didn't explain the whole journey. You just said, "Go." And because Abraham trusted you, he went. Your word says in Hebrews 11:8, "By faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out not knowing whither he went." Lord, give me faith like Abraham. Help me to obey your call even when I don't know where it will lead. Help me to start walking even when I can't see the destination. I think about Moses, Father. You called him to lead your people out of Egypt. He didn't feel qualified. He didn't understand how it would work. He had every reason to say no, but he chose to obey, and you used him to do mighty things. God, there are things you're calling me to do that I don't feel ready for. There are steps you're asking me to take that I don't understand. But like Moses, I want to say yes to you. Help me to trust that if you're calling me, you'll also equip me. I think about Noah, Lord. You asked him to build an ark when there was no rain in sight. His neighbors thought he was crazy. It didn't make logical sense. But Noah obeyed for 120 years before he saw the reason why. And his obedience saved his entire family. Father, help me to obey you even when others don't understand. Help me to keep going even when it takes longer than I expected. Help me to trust that my obedience has purpose, even if I can't see it yet. Lord, I confess that sometimes I treat you like I need to approve your plans first. I wait to obey until your instructions make sense to me. I hold back until I can see how everything will work out. But Father, that's not faith. That's not trust. That's me trying to be in control. Forgive me for the times I've delayed obedience because I wanted to understand everything first. Forgive me for treating my limited understanding as more reliable than your infinite wisdom. Help me to flip this around, God. Help me to obey first, knowing that understanding will come when I need it. Your word says in John 7:17, "If any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine." Lord, you're teaching me that obedience leads to understanding, not the other way around. When I do your will, I learn your ways. When I step out in faith, you reveal things I couldn't see from the shore. Father, this morning I want to commit to immediate obedience. When you speak to my heart, help me to respond right away instead of analyzing, questioning, and delaying. Help me to say, "Yes, Lord," before I ask, "But why, Lord?" I know that delayed obedience is really just disobedience in slow motion. God, help me to remember that your thoughts are higher than my thoughts. Your ways are higher than my ways. You see things I cannot see. You know things I do not know. You understand connections and consequences that are invisible to me. When I don't understand why you're leading me a certain way, help me to trust that you have good reasons. When your instructions don't make sense to my logical mind, help me to remember that your wisdom is far beyond my comprehension. Lord, I'm grateful that you don't withhold guidance just because I might not understand it. You lead me step by step, knowing that some steps will only make sense later. You're patient with my questions, but you don't require me to have all the answers before I follow you. Thank you for being a good father who guides me, even when I can't see the whole picture. Father, help me to distinguish between wisdom and worry. There's a difference between being thoughtful and being paralyzed by the need to understand everything. You've given me a mind to use, but you don't want me to be trapped by overthinking. Help me to pray, to seek your will, to get wise counsel when needed, but then to move forward in obedience even if I don't have every detail figured out. Your word says in Isaiah 55:8-9, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." Lord, I bow before your superior wisdom. I acknowledge that there are things I simply cannot understand from where I stand. And that's okay. I don't need to understand everything. I just need to trust you. God, when you ask me to forgive someone who hurt me, help me to obey even when I don't understand how I can possibly do it. When you ask me to give when it doesn't make financial sense, help me to obey even when the math doesn't add up. When you ask me to wait when I want to rush ahead, help me to obey even when patience feels impossible. Your commands are always for my good, even when they're hard to understand in the moment. Father, I think about the disciples when Jesus told them to launch out into the deep and let down their nets. They were professional fishermen. They had fished all night and caught nothing. Jesus' instruction didn't make sense to their experience and expertise. But Peter said, "Nevertheless, at thy word, I will let down the net." And their obedience led to a miraculous catch. Lord, give me the faith to say, "Nevertheless, at your word, I will obey." Help me to act on your word even when it contradicts my experience, my logic, or my understanding. God, I'm learning that obedience is an act of worship. When I choose to obey you before I understand, I'm declaring that you are God and I am not. I'm saying that I trust your character more than I trust my ability to figure things out. Help me to see obedience as a gift I give to you, not a burden you place on me. Your word says in 1 Samuel 15:22, "Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams." Lord, you value my obedience more than any religious activity I could perform. You're more pleased when I simply do what you ask than when I offer you elaborate worship while ignoring your voice. Help me to be a person who listens and obeys, not someone who knows your word but doesn't live it. Father, I know that some of my greatest blessings are on the other side of obedience. Some of the miracles you want to do in my life are waiting for me to take steps of faith. Some of the understanding I'm seeking will only come when I obey what I already know. Help me not to miss out on what you have for me just because I insisted on understanding everything first. Lord, when you ask me to speak up for truth, help me to obey even when I'm afraid. When you ask me to be silent and wait, help me to obey even when I'm eager to act. When you ask me to take a risk, help me to obey even when I want security. When you ask me to let go, help me to obey even when I want to hold on. Your instructions are always perfect, even when they're not comfortable. God, I thank you that understanding does come. You don't leave us in confusion forever. As we walk in obedience, you reveal more and more of your plan. As we trust you step by step, the path becomes clearer. Sometimes the understanding comes in this life. Sometimes it won't come until heaven. But either way, I can trust that my obedience matters and that you are working all things together for good. Your word says in Deuteronomy 29:29, "The secret things belong unto the Lord our God, but those things which are revealed belong unto us and to our children forever, that we may do all the words of this law." Father, help me to be content with what you've revealed and to trust you with the secret things. Help me to focus on obeying what I do know rather than being paralyzed by what I don't know. Lord, as I go through this day, I will encounter moments where you ask me to obey before I understand. Give me the courage to say yes quickly. Give me the humility to admit I don't have to understand everything. Give me the faith to believe that you know what you're doing. Help me to remember that the safest place to be is in the center of your will, even if I don't understand why it's your will. Thank you for loving me enough to lead me, even when the path doesn't make sense to me yet. Thank you for being patient with my questions while still calling me forward. Thank you for never asking me to obey something that isn't ultimately for my good. Father, I surrender my need to understand everything. I surrender my desire to have all the answers before I move. I surrender my tendency to trust my own wisdom more than yours. I choose obedience. I choose trust. I choose to follow you even when I can't see where we're going. Help this to be my daily prayer. Lord, I don't understand, but I trust you. I can't see the whole picture, but I know you can. Lead me, and I will follow. Use my obedience today to bless others, to bring glory to you, and to move your purposes forward in this world. Let my life be a testimony that following you is always the right choice, even when it's the hard choice. Thank you for being worthy of my trust. Thank you for being faithful even when I don't understand your ways. Thank you for the peace that comes from resting in your wisdom instead of struggling in my own confusion. In Jesus' precious and holy name I pray. Amen. If this prayer encouraged you to trust God's leading even when you don't understand, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Sometimes we're called to obey before we see the reason why, and that's where real faith begins. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for daily prayers and encouragement in your walk with God. May the Lord give you courage to obey Him today, even before you understand everything. God bless you and keep you.